tell me what scientists do really well, or engineers do really well, sorry. Exactly, precisely. You all don't communicate well. Let's be honest. None of you, that's not your forte. That's not your expertise, right? I actually do a lot of research in science communication and health communication because part of my job is helping you communicate what you do to people who don't do what you do. So tonight, I'm going to try to tell you about a couple of tools that we use in communication to explore how do you engage audiences, how do you communicate your stories, and how do you tell stories. A lot of the storytelling that we've done on the projects that I'm going to be telling you about are actually cause marketing issues. So are y'all familiar with cause marketing? So for instance, what are you really passionate about? If you were to donate money to something, what would it be?
I would probably say like hunger relief.
Right. So feed the homeless, what is that called? Feeding America. Feeding America is an example of a nonprofit organization that does cause marketing. What's your cause? What would be where would you volunteer your time?
Any like disaster relief, especially with like the hurricanes and stuff.
Absolutely, I'm with you. I'm actually supposed to be getting married in November in Puerto Rico, so yeah, that'll be fun. What about you?
I would say disaster relief.
Okay, well, I'm glad that two of you chose disaster relief, and then we'll come back and use you as an example and see how we might convert some of the things that we've done. One of the projects that I'm actually going to tell you about tonight is some virtual reality storytelling and augmented reality storytelling that we've done surrounding disaster relief, but a year after the disaster. So looking at the floods that happened in southern West Virginia 18 months ago now, looking at a year afterwards and seeing how we could help those people, help those communities tell their stories. And as part of that, we wanted to take legislators and policymakers back to their home communities and show them what was happening, but make them feel like they were there. So that'll sort of give us a foundation or a starting point. So we've worked with a lot of toys and a lot of tools, but at its heart, storytelling, good storytelling always is the same thing. What was the last book you read or movie that you watched that you completely forgot all scope of space and time and you forgot everything that was happening? Huh? Bullet? Okay. What about you? Last book or movie that you watched that you completely lost all sense of space and time? Helter Skelter? Interstellar, okay. What about you? A good book or a good movie that you've watched? Imitation Game? Okay. So with those, each of those pieces had all the elements of good storytelling. Unfortunately, I can't use any of those examples because I don't think I've watched any of them. Shows how little I watch TV, right? But so with each of them, there was probably a character that resonated with you, right? Somebody that you emotionally connected with, or you understood their plight, or there was something in the story that that was compelling and you wanted to see what happened. You wanted to see how we got to the end. So those are all still very important no matter what the channel is. So that's where we start when we're talking about it in our classes, is what are the elements of good storytelling? What does the audience want to know? How are you going to connect to them? So it's what we call strategic communications. It's the foundation of everything that we do. We have to understand our audience, understand what types of stories and what types of messages will resonate with them, and then we have to pick the right channels to do it. So one of the channels that we've used is 3D modeling. And we explored 3D modeling as part of a partnership with a company called Matterport. And Matterport loaned us some of these cameras that have been used pretty consistently commercially in the real estate business. So high-end, people who dealt with high-end real estate would go in and build 3D models using this Matterport camera of places. So when rich guy who lives in Europe wants to buy a property in LA, he can look at the space as a 3D model. He can look at the physical space from Europe without making the decision to get on his private jet and waste all those precious fossil fuels to get here, right? So it was a way to begin to demonstrate, or as a way to begin extending the real estate's marketing toolbox. Well, once they sort of worked out the beta kinks, they said, okay, there's a lot more potential to this, and what might this potential look like? So they agreed to work with West Virginia University, specifically the Reed College of Media, gave us a couple of cameras and said, okay, what would you do with this? And so we went back to what stories do we need to tell and how can this be useful in our larger story packages? And So we built some 3D models, and we had this challenge again. How do we digitally reconstruct environments in a way that supports storytelling, connects audiences to a place, but it's a 3D model. It's not, you're not going to talk with somebody in there when you're in there. You're not going to tell a story. So it's part of a larger narrative, as we say. But we wanted to digitally reconstruct environments in this easy to use tool that allows you basically to just set up, and then you move a few feet and you set up, and it takes these pictures and reconstructs the space. And we wanted to figure out where we could share them. So what we ultimately ended up doing was 2 of the projects that we worked on. One was with community branding. So we were working in Whitesville, West Virginia. We had a grant to help Whitesville reimagine itself post-coal. So they were a community that was completely built on coal. In fact, the 3D model that we built as part of the history of the town is from the mining disaster that happened there some time ago, and I forget the number of miners who were killed in it. But that's an important part of their history, and we didn't want to lose that when we were helping them to rebrand themselves, when we were helping them to reimagine themselves, which we ultimately helped them create a campaign that sort of tied the two together. So it's a place of history and heritage. It wasn't exactly the tagline, but that was the concept, was you can come here and you can learn about history, and here's all the ways you can do it. And here, oh, by the way, here's a curriculum, and you can also come here and learn about the environment. There's access to water and whatever. But as part of the storytelling, and to engage audiences and create interest, we created this 3D model. Just kidding, I'm not going to be able to show it to you. So can you see it okay? Yeah? If not, I can launch it full screen. It's just a pain to have to go back and forth. So see, it's taken you there, and I'll turn it around a little bit so you can see. When I move through the space, any place that there's a little circle, I can walk to. And I can turn around, and the quality is so good that I can actually come up here and I can read what it says. And I can walk through this monument as if I'm there. And this was created by one of our students as a way to help build into the heritage activities for the Whitesville community. So we built this whole website for them and all of the component parts of the branding, and this was just one part of the story. This wasn't the whole narrative, this wasn't everything that I was going to tell them, but it was a way to give them a sense and a feel about this wonderful community that has this rich history in coal, but is trying to reimagine itself. The other one we did, and actually I didn't work on this project, one of my colleagues did, is, we have like this forensic science program here. Are y'all aware of that? Like completely incredible, amazing. So they wanted, but one of the problems that they have is that people who are in the forensic science program, or high school kids who come to the forensic science program think it's all science, or don't realize how much science and math it is. So they wanted to do something that was kind of engaging with them. And one of the concepts that we ended up working with forensic science to help tell their story, but one of the pieces that my colleagues' students built was this, hey Charlotte, can you solve this mystery at the WVU crime scene? And what it does is take you through the crime house with the crime scene set up. And there's 2 of them that are set up. One takes you through it and you're trying to find it yourself. And if you can find it and you go up and you click on the blood splatter or the thing that's out of place, it'll tell you, oh, you found one of the clues and here's what it means. And then if you can't find all of them, there's a second 3D model that is set up that you can go through the house and it shows you all of the different clues throughout it. So it was a way to engage people and help them better understand what went into forensic science and how they go about, what do they do with blood splatter, and what does the dimensions of the blood splatter mean in terms of, and how do you have to figure that out from a science and math standpoint to help them better communicate and overcome some of the misconceptions. All right, I'm gonna do something I never do, but this is gonna be a big pain because I just realized it's, all right, so I'm going to leave that there so I can keep going to some of these projects to give you. No, I'm not. That looks tacky. People at home, bear with me. All right, so moving now into another story. So the first one was a 3D model. I've taken people there. I've given them the agency, the autonomy to move around in the space however they want, have the experience however they want. But now I want to take the storytelling to another level. I want to take them out of reality, and I want to put them in the reality that I want them to be in, but I want to give them some autonomy to look around and move around and see this space. So for this project, this is the one where we were working with trying to help folks understand what was the situation in these southern West Virginia communities a year after the flood. They don't instantly rebuild. People don't instantly have homes again. But one of the issues, or one of the concerns that my students and I grappled with, is that we don't want to perpetuate myths of Appalachia, and we don't want to further highlight any issues of poverty or whatever, because that wasn't the story. The story we wanted to tell was how resilient the people were and how they were rebuilding and how hopeful they were. So we identified three public schools, 2 high schools and 1 elementary school, who were post-flood doing things within the school system that were helping their communities or helping their students overcome issues of the flood, while concurrently helping them in another way. So one of them was an elementary school that had a high tunnel that the elementary school students, when the floods happened this is down by Greenbrier County, and when the floods happened, a lot of the kids are in cars up on higher elevations, and they can hear people scream and they don't understand why they can't get out of the car, or they completely lost their house, or they've not been able, since this devastation happened, to go back to their home. They've been living separated in multiple different households. So they use this high tunnel and the teachers, the elementary school teachers, notice that the kids, every time, there's a tin roof on the school, unfortunately, every time it rained, the kids had to go and they didn't think it had to go to the window, or they couldn't concentrate, or they noticed that they were agitated or upset. So they started using this high tunnel as a way to help students understand the good that can come from rain, and help them emotionally start to talk about and deal with the problems that they faced, or the issues that they faced. It's also in a food desert, so being able to grow fresh produce, they're actually able to teach the students about some of the nutritional value of growing your own produce. So that was one of the stories. Another story was a high school in southern West Virginia at Clay County. Tiny Homes is Clay County High School. Clay County High School said, hey, we have a vocational tech program. Why don't we put the vocational tech program to work? Let's build a tiny home and donate it to somebody who lost their house. Very cool project, right? The third project was is at Herbert Hoover High School, which they completely lost their school. The entire school was demolished. There was flooding up to almost to the second floor, mold, mildew, all kinds of really bad situations. So they lost everything in the building So what ended up happening is those high school students went to school the second half of the day in the middle school, where the middle school students went the first half of the day. So middle school students came in, went to school the first half of the day, had lunch, they left. High school students came in, had lunch, and spent the rest of the day, which left no room really in the curriculum and didn't leave a whole lot of opportunity for those high school students to learn about alternative careers, or to learn about anything other than English, language arts, and math. And there was a couple of teachers there who were running sort of after school programs and who were really passionate, and had started before the floods, had started teaching their kids about STEM, or teaching them about mechanical engineering, I think it is, where they were taking an old motorcycle and converting it from gas to electric. But they lost all of their tools, they lost all of their supplies, and these 2 teachers had in fact invested much of their own personal money to buy all the stuff like the Raspberry Pis for coding and all of that. They'd invested their own money in these projects. So these people are doing really remarkable things, but they need funding, they need awareness, they need help getting across the finish line to be able to make these projects to scale and to grow them and whatever. There's interest and passion, but I mean, the tiny home, they gave away the tiny home. How are they gonna build another one? They need money. The high school teachers lost all of their supplies, but they want to redo these programs, and where is that money going to come from? And how are we going to get their story out so that people are aware and they want to support them? So, and also, how do we remind the policy people that our public schools are really doing innovative things, and oftentimes they're the glue that binds a community together. They're what brings a quality of life to a community. So we created these virtual reality stories to help and video stories and landing pages and an entire content halo that included a media outreach campaign, a community outreach campaign, a social media campaign, but it's really anchored in these virtual reality stories. And one of the things that we ended up doing, we did activations. We went to places where people were going to be, like with the community garden. We went to the Charleston Farmers Market, and we put people in headsets and let them see the kids working in the garden with their master gardener and their teacher, and the cute little kids holding their little flowers, and "Will you help me grow?" was the tagline for that one. I mean, of course, who's going to see these cute little kids down in the dirt and not want to buy them some seeds? I mean, we're talking about a couple of bucks. But one of the other things that we did with it was we took those virtual reality stories and we went to DC and we put their legislators in the headsets and we said, hey, by the way, this is what's going on in your home community. These public schools are doing really great things. They just need a little support. So we wanted to create awareness for them. But when you're doing virtual reality, the crazy thing about VR is that it's not like watching a TV show. Yes, that can be immersive, but research scientists who study the brain say that what happens inside your brain cognitively when you're watching or you're having a VR experience is the same as a lived experience. The same synapses fire so that it's like you have processed a lived experience. So it's a deeper emotional connection. So if you tell really powerful stories and you tell stories of hope and you give them a character like we talked to connect to these children, these narrators in the story, the teacher who spent $5,000 of his own money and then lost all of his supplies, and at the end of the video he says, if I have to pony up again, I will. It's my kids. I want to make sure they know what their chances are, what their options are. So we used VR to tell really powerful stories through computer simulated reality. They are a lot more difficult to create. They require a lot more tools. You have to have, a GoPro rig with 360 cameras on it, and you go out and once you go out and film, you have to come back and stitch. So it is a more complicated process, but it's getting easier and easier with. AR kits coming. That's more AR than VR, but I'll come back to that. It's getting easier and it's getting less expensive. There are cameras now, a couple $100 where you can create some simple VR. And I was talking on another panel with some folks from USA Today and one of the big PR agencies, and who was working with FEMA on telling their own how do you prepare for a disaster, who are also creating VR experiences. And they said that they're actually starting to purchase some cameras for people who work in communities that are a couple $100, $250, so that they can produce at least 360 stories, because people sometimes can't understand a space unless they have some agency to look around in it. So they are more difficult to create, but it's getting easier. As I mentioned, they have lived experiences. They do, however, require what we call activations, which means I have to be with you or you have to have a headset in order for me to tell you the story, right? So it's a little harder to pull off, but it's really good if they're specific, important people like legislators that you want to tell that story to and you want to have an impact amidst the deluge of insanity that people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So here's a couple of pictures from our experiences. We've done a couple of workshops, which is the bottom picture. That's mansion in the headset is the bottom picture from the bottom. And then the top two are actually kids from the class on location filming to produce the videos. The first one at the tiny home, the second one at the garden. So our students produced all these stories, and then we built the content halo around them. One of the other things that we explored was what I was showing you all when you came in was augmented reality. So I say augmented reality, you say, oh, come on, this always works. I say augmented reality, you say Pokemon? Nobody wanted to say Pokemon? Every time I talk about this in front of an audience, they're like, Pokemon! Look what my first picture is. I was so confident y'all were gonna say it that I had loaded it. I actually have, every time I say augmented reality, everybody's like, oh, it's Pokemon, it was a fad. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's not, I promise. And part of the reason I'm able to say, no, it's not, I promise, is because the new iPhone that's coming out has an AR kit on it, making it possible for people to create it. We've been playing with it on some free shareware apps for a while, to the extent that the freshmen read this year, you all aren't freshmen, are you freshmen? So the freshman read this year is Hidden Figures. One of my colleagues worked with the library to David Smith, for those of you who know him out in TV land, went around campus and turned different things on campus into triggers, just like that thing that, so the picture that you just saw was a trigger that was activated in that camera. So he went around campus and turned like the Mountaineer downtown into a trigger, so that information pops up and you can see what the history of the Mountaineer is. So it tells you the story of actual objects on campus. The other reason I say that AR is a real viable possibility is because everybody has a phone in their pocket, right? Got a phone? Got a phone, got a phone, got a phone, got a phone, got a phone. Everybody got a phone. It's in your pocket, and any space can be turned into a trigger. So imagine you're driving down the road, and they're talking about, the people who are way more forward-thinking than me are talking about that it could be potentially built into Glass, like Google Glass was kind of a beta version for a lot of things that, I mean, yeah, Google Glass is done, whatever. They're talking about reinvigorating it. But it provided a platform for some experimentation. And Google does a lot of that. So the Glass allowed them to start experimenting with it, but now AR could potentially be built into glasses so that you look at something and you have the option for it to be turned into, like you look at a wall and that wall then has a billboard on it because you looked at it in the right way or whatever. And you look at me, I feel like you're looking at me and a little bit saying, maybe that's a little too sci-fi for me, Pressgrove. Maybe you're a little kooky out there. But let me tell you this. So, and Google has this I heard a speaker at our WVU's Integrate, the Reed College of Media does this conference called Integrate for all of our IMC students every year. And they always bring in these amazing speakers. And one of the speakers was a guy from Google who worked in Google Tech. And the thing that he said that resonated with me is that all of the tech that they create is to solve a problem. So you look at Google Glass and you're like, what the hell problem is that solving? But the idea actually originated from, they wanted to create, they saw a high volume of people with diabetes having insulin control issues. So they wanted to create contact lenses, which in fact they did. I don't know how well they work, but contact lenses that would send an alert to your phone to let, I don't know how widespread use they are, I don't have diabetes, but that you put the contact lens and if your insulin levels dropped, you would get an alert to your phone. So they were trying to solve a health problem, and on the way they created this thing that they could market and make money off of, right? So they take on projects and they take on the investigation of science and technology because they want to solve problems. So I think because ARKit is coming out on iPhone and because Google has this mentality and they've already been playing in the Google Glass space, that AR really does have the most potential. And so as you know, because you've seen it now, AR is really just an overlay of content on the real world. So that could be as simple as Pokemon or the examples I showed you before class, or it could be as complicated as having full-scale rooms where you go into and everything is things that you can pick up and things you can move around. You're already able to do that with Halo a little bit. We've got a Halo over at the center. And actually start moving things around. But the technology is going to go soon to, you don't have to be in this massive device, or so they say, so that you can actually be in these spaces and have these augmented reality experiences. So the basic forms of AR are very easy to create. One of the tricks that my students like to do when I take them out to these big conferences, and we're talking to, there's 150 professionals in the room, and they're all PR professionals, and they're the industry leaders. And my students are standing up there like, oh, you think AR is too hard to do? No, come here, give me your business card. Say something smart. Okay, great. Oh, look, here, I just created one. Let me show you how to do it. So it really is like a matter of 5 minutes. There's an app called Aurasma, A-U-R-A-S-M-A, which is the one that we play with most often. It's free. If you're interested, go do it. Weird out your friends. Seriously, it's tons of fun. You can turn anything into a trigger. I mean, you could turn your kitchen sink into a trigger and have it turn into a video of you saying what you want for dinner. I mean, it can be anything. That was probably a little kooky because I'm hungry. Okay, and I've said all this stuff. Everyone has the tool in their pocket. So that middle story is, again, us going out showing people. And I love that picture because it's some of my young students showing this sweet little old lady an AR thing. And she was so blown away by it. She came back to our table like 3 times. Like there's 300 people in the room and everybody's letting her through because she's this cute old lady, right? And I'm like, y'all, she's already been up here 3 times. Like you can, anyway, it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun showing people this because they have a lot of the same reaction. Sometimes we'll set up over at the Media Innovation Center when we have freshmen coming in or we have incoming class, we'll turn one of our classrooms into a gallery of not so impressive pictures, is what we call it. So we've taken pictures and we've turned them all into triggers and we've put them up and they're walking around looking at the pictures and they're largely unimpressive pictures for a College of Media that has a photojournalist program in it, right? We have people who are professional photographers and we intentionally use pictures that really aren't that impressive because we don't want them to be like, oh, that picture's amazing. And then just be like, oh, by the way, there's also this cheesy video. So we turn them into triggers and we bring the kids in and they're always like, oh, that's some Harry Potter stuff. So it's a lot of fun like to introduce them to the potential. And everybody kind of has that same first reaction like, man, that's so cool. And I think there's so much potential for it. So I'll give you one more thing, and then I'll sort of recap my big thought processes on this for you science communicator people. When you create these stories, so the VR, you have to go there, you have to create an experience there. People are going to be standing around waiting for their chance in the headset. You're going to have some way to tell that story. That VR story is also a 360 story. So how is it going to live in the world? What's going to happen? So one of the other things that we play with is not just how do you produce the story in a video format or an AR format, but how do you package the story? What's the content halo? And one of the cool things that is, I didn't know it was going to be a bunch of engineers in the audience tonight, so y'all probably won't think this is as amazing as I do, but I think it's really cool, is this program called Verse. And what they allow us to do is package an experience. So I'll show it to you. This is the issue of foster care. And again, this was one of my colleagues who was working on it. I meant to click. Oh, no, I don't want to hyperlink. It's already hyperlinked. I just want to open the hyperlink. Just kidding. I'm not going to open the hyperlink because apparently it's not there. Anyway, what this, I don't know where it went, sorry. What this allows us to do is that box that I wasn't able to click on is not just one linear video. So the thing about all the channels that I've showed you so far, the 3D model, the VR, the AR, it allows people to have agency and autonomy within their experience. But the question then becomes, if I give you a 3D experience and a website that's static, I'm still not letting you choose your own adventure. I'm still telling you this is where you have to go to get the information, and I'm still going to take you through the story. So what this allows you to do, what this Verse program allows you to do, and there's others out there, this is just the one we've been experimenting with, it allows you to create video hotspots. So if you're watching a video, and this one's on foster care, but they're also doing it for traffic issues here in Morgantown, you can click on something and find out what the fatalities were, or what the wreck incidences were, what the cause for it is, or how do you properly go around a roundabout. And you can package multiple videos, or you can be playing through a video and click on somebody's face and it's a Q&A with them. It's just an interview with them. And it's still packaged in a longer narrative. So if you're the guy that goes in and says, I just want to read this, I don't want to watch this video, you have the full story to read. But if you go in and you say, I'm a choose my own adventure kind of guy, you can pick which chapter within that story you want to go to. You can figure out within that story, do you want to have a VR, do you want a 360 experience? Do you want to have a video experience? Do you want to see the Q&A? Do you want to just go in and click on things and watch buttons pop up so you can learn lots of fun facts? This allows us to package things, so it says video hotspot, slideshows, Q&As, pathfinders, chapters. So it allows us to package the story, again, taking the agency away from the storyteller and giving it to the person in the audience that we want to connect with. We want to engage with you. We want you to choose your own adventure. So that we make sure that we're providing you with the information that you want, because I suspect, even though you all are all engineers in this room, you probably have different backgrounds, you have different experiences, you have different interests. So the way that you go about consuming a story is going to be different. So this allows us to create portals for different people within the audiences, different segments within the audience, to have an experience that's tailor-made for them because it was tailor-made by them. So I'm really excited about the potential of this interactive video and this interactive way to package stories as a vehicle to engage audiences. So as I promised, my last slide. Y'all having a little bit of fun even though y'all are engineers and this is totally like media junks? My kids will tell you I'm a highly animated, so I try to at least make it interesting. So my background is public relations, which is all about building relations, mutually beneficial relationships. Mutually beneficial relationships. I've said it so many times in the past 2 months that my mouth gets dry just saying it again. But that's what we do. We're about mutually beneficial relationship between Feeding America and that disaster relief agency, or Coca-Cola, or whoever it is. If you as the audience feels like you have a mutually beneficial relationship, that you're volunteering for me and you feel good about what you did, or you're giving me money and you feel good about where it went, that's good public relations. We're trying to build a relationship, and even more so, we're trying to build a dialogue, because if you look at me like a friend instead of a bricks and mortar kind of place, if you look at me like you have this parasocial kinship to me, you're gonna stay loyal to me, right? You're gonna stay loyal to my brand. I wanna do that. I want to create that. So we say, do good public relations. Don't just tell good stories, do good public relations. So that requires doing, for us, it requires doing your research. We had to know what the audience cared about, and not all audiences care about the same thing. The way that we package the story with the cute little kids and their cute little smiles, and that's not going to resonate with everybody. But it would resonate with the audience that we were going to direct every decision we make. Is it a VR story? Is it a 360 story? Is it a landing page? Is it a fully packaged content halo that takes forever to create? If we're going to invest that much time, what we get out of it, the outcome that we achieve, we better get real close to the finish line, because we've just burnt all of our human time creating that big old package. So we have to focus on our outcomes and what it is that we're trying to achieve, and making sure that the story that we're telling and the way that we're distributing that story all align to help us achieve our goal. Keep your audience central. I've talked about that. Understanding who your audience is and how do you connect with them is very important. Remember the content halo. So verse I get real excited about, because to me it's the ultimate content halo, but still I've got to get people to it. It still lives on the World Wide Web with gazillions and gazillions of other stories and other content. If I can't drive traffic to that, if I can't engage people with that, my content halo is kind of thin. But I will say one of the things that we learned in working with Riot was that a lot of times when people find out about an issue, like for instance, Standing Rock. They found out about Standing Rock from the nightly news, but when they wanted to go find more depth, they were looking for a great landing page that had a lot of content that told the story well. And that was really one of the ways that Riot became highly visible, was because they went to Standing Rock and they told that story as a 360 experience. They told it well with photography, they told it well with the written word, and they told it well with interviews with people. So they still told the story well, but they also did this whole distribution destination thing that I'll talk about next. This is infinitely less useful information to you all, but if you want to know how our world thinks, is you have to think about, so a lot of our communications models are about engaging audiences and so forth, but the way that technology is shifting and trending, you have to think about it a little, you have to add some more thought process, I think, to your distribution strategy, to your engagement strategy. So destination being, do you want your content to be a destination? Are you driving people to your website to see that, to your landing page to see it? Distribution is like, do I want somebody else to post this information and I want it to live on in somebody else's space because they already have the readership, they already have the audience. And I'm simplifying these a great deal, and then the last one is activation. So we've always done events. That's always been part of the public relations wheelhouse. But with activations, you have to think through the technology of it. Did you get it to work? You got it? So one of the challenges that we face is we're forever going in some doggone place that ain't got no Wi-Fi. And I can't show you that unless I used to not be able to, show you this great virtual reality experience unless I've got Wi-Fi, because it lives on the Media Innovation Center website. So we had to start thinking through and problem solving and tech solving constantly, because when you go on location, it's not just a power outlet, it's not just a Wi-Fi, I have to have a space where somebody feels comfortable with me, who they don't know, putting something over their head that is going to take them out of reality, knowing that everybody else in the room is staring at them. And like, you have to think about all these factors. So, and you have to figure out whether you go to where people are or you create experience and you bring people to you. So there's a lot of elements that go into engaging audiences that are unique to some of these new storytelling platforms. But ultimately what it comes down to is that any story can be immersive. VR, AR, 360, 3D, interactive video, all of these things have their time and their place, but they're not always needed all the time. So understanding which audience and which channel and which story to use is something that we're still trying to figure out, and we constantly talk about and argue about and debate about, and that's sort of the science of where we are right now, is figuring out how and when and where and who to tell these stories to. So that's it. That's how we're preparing a new generation of communicators, storytellers, and audience engagement experts. That's what we do over at the Reed College of Media. And I'd love to hear what you engineers do, but I think it would make my brain sizzle at this hour. So instead of that, I'll let you tell me if you have any questions, and if not, I'll let Maya show you. If you're interested in having a short VR experience, I'll let Maya show you her story. Questions? Aurasma, A-U-R-A-S-M-A. It's like Aurasma. It's a lot of fun to play with. I've probably played with it too much. I've probably become annoying. I play with it so much. Like, oh, I'm going to turn you into AR. So, any other questions? Well, thanks for coming out. I hope I entertained you at least, even if it was not exactly probably what you were thinking. I don't know. And that's all. Bye, folks at home.